All right, welcome to this video on how to use the indicator, our spectrum indicator in NinjaTrader. Right here, I'm going to demonstrate the entries, what to look for. I'm also going to do this on a playback mode so I can play, pause, etc., and explain this to you and break it down. Otherwise, in live market conditions, it's a little more difficult. However, you could still catch that whenever it is that we show that if you're part of the live sessions. So I'm going to put here the indicator, which is on already. You see it right here. Hopefully you're following from the previous video on how to add it. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit so you can see this a little bit closer up. All right, so let me go ahead and start here. And we will move forward, and I will pause it as soon as we get an entry signal. So here we go. Let's see if I can speed this up. All right, so right here we're observing price. We're really not doing anything. The key here is to just wait for our indicator to give us an entry signal. Until that point, you really don't do much. All right, so the key here is to wait right where, I'm going to pause here for a second. So you see how here price closed below the indicator line, right? Well, this, right, has not turned red. You see how it turned red here? Right, so the key is to wait for this to turn red, right? If it has not turned red, you are not taking an entry, therefore there is no signal. Let's wait for this next candle to close, right? That candle clearly is closing above, no signal yet. We're just waiting. All we're doing here is sitting, enjoying our time, watching the market, being patient, right? So let's see if we get, okay. At this point, right, we did get our signal. Now this is moving pretty quick, right? I have it at a quick speed. Now the ideal entry once this candle closes, right? And I would rewind, but I can't really finally rewind. Is to look for an entry, right? Either immediately. So if you get this right here, this is red, right? One entry option you have is just enter right here short, and your stop would go right above this previous candle, right? We call this the confirmation candle because that's what confirms that we have an entry signal and the line has indeed turned red and the candle is closed. You take an entry here, your stop goes below, sorry, in this case above the previous candle to the confirmation. So let's just do this here, sell. We are a little bit late to the party here. Give me 1 second, I didn't have my strategy set. So let's say that I sell, right? In this case, I do have two contracts, but I'm just doing an example. Your stop goes right there above the candle, right prior. And then let's hit play and see how this proceeds. I'm going to slow it down a bit. All right, and if you wanted to see this, this is showing us here in points. You can always click in NinjaTrader here, the little area. Even when you're doing this live, right, this will show you in ticks. And this is obviously more entertaining in dollars. So we'll hit play, right? And so where are we aiming for, right? Now, you can see here on the chart that we have several lows that have not been touched, right? So we have, there's clearly the first low right here, right? There's another low. Technically, there's two lows, right? So I'll just put this one right here. This is the extreme. Underneath, you also have another low right here, right? So any one of these could be a target. Now, what I like to do personally, and this is where the discretionary part of trading comes out, and you gotta get in tune with this, right? You need to align yourself. After seeing this for a while, you'll get the hang of how far these moves propagate, how far they don't. One of the things that I like to do specifically in a trade like this, right? You can see we never got stopped out, even though we had a late entry, right? We never got to the top of that previous candle. Now, we need to see what price does now, right? But something I like to do if you want to be aggressive is you can immediately trail. So let's just say you're up in this situation. We have 2NQ, that's very hefty, but let's just say you're up, right? Regardless of the size, we put it in points, right? You're up 5.75 points. You can just as easily right here, you have your profit, right? You have your money, whatever that money might be. In this case, we have 5.75 points. You can easily just go here, break even, right? Now you're completely risk off. However, usually it's best to do that once the candle has closed. Now in this case, forgot to mention we're in the 4-minute time frame, right? So you're waiting 4 minutes for this next candle. So let's hit play and see exactly what happens here. So we're waiting patiently. Now I want to show this, right? I'm pausing again. As price starts to move, you see how we are rejecting these lows. So this is why I say this is where discretionary part comes out. Now, what does that mean? Discretionary means it's at your own discretion. So you're going down into this, right? As price approaches this low right here, these lows, right? You're gonna have some pushback, right? Is it all the time? No. Sometimes you're gonna slice right through. Sometimes you're gonna bounce all the way back and maybe channel. Again, this is where you monitor your trade and you manage it, right? And this is where you come in. However, what we do get is a very clear entry signal. If by any chance you did take 2NQ, again, this is all risk management. We cover another video. But if your account supports this sizing and you are up, this amount, and that is something you are comfortable with, you can just take profit right there, right? The idea of this indicator is it helps you get very clean signals, filter out noise, right? And so right here you see, for example, in this, a lot of people might have said, whoa, look at that massive candle to the downside. I'm going to get in short. Well, our indicator did not show us any signal. Therefore, there's no reason to take it, right? And it's very important to follow a system. Again, that's also covered in another video, but in any system you use, you need to follow it and stick to it. And, part 2 of that is, or the flip side of that is manage your risk. So if you're up, let's say in this case, 340 with 2 contracts, and you don't want to risk a lot, right? Let's move our stop right here. Now we're in profit. If price does bounce back, right, then we have nothing to lose. For the sake of this example only, I am not going to manage risk. I'm going to let it play out so we can see exactly what happens, right? And I'll leave it in dollar value. Again, it's more entertaining. But see, ultimately, personally, I would be looking to get down to this area right here. But that's not always something that happens, right? Sometimes we just come down to this low right here. I mean, at this point, right, let's just say you're up, with this little pullback here, right? We just, and again, observe, right? We hit the low. What are we doing? We're rejecting it, right? Does that always happen? No, right? So in this case, we broke, hit, rejected, continued, big pullback, continued, right? And so at all these areas, you've had profit, right? In this example, you could put, your stop down to here. We do have systems where we'll cover another video on trailing, and you can review that as well. But systems meaning that we'll teach you how to trail, right? But in any case, you need to decide where you want to take profit or not. I'm going to trail, let's just say, to break even. I don't know where this trade really goes. Right, but pretty much at this point, again, if with this sizing specifically, you're going to see greater returns in a quicker amount of time. It's not the same for everything. We have some idea of what we consider to be okay, right? As far as we've seen best results with 2MNQ. Again, I cover that myself, or Javier, I forgot who covers it in the risk management video. But basically, that's what it is, right? You want to manage your risk, take your profit. You caught a very nice entry. You had a nice move down. You hit that low. Technically, you should have had your take profit, right, at this wick low right here. Why? Because that's a very good spot, right? You got a nice move down. You do have a big wick. These big wicks tend to have rejections, as you can see right here, right? This is after the fact that price, but you'll observe this over time, and that's where practice comes in. The indicator itself gives you a very great entry, right? And then you manage your trade from there on. So if after this whole pullback I wanted to, I said, you know what? That was quite the pullback. I almost got stopped at break even. Let me move this down, right? And now I'm going to let the trade continue to play out. Let me move this down just to where I would like it. I personally like to aim at this area right here. So let's see. See how this propagates. Right, at any given point in time, you can always move your stop down a little more. Right, so right there I got stopped. Right, now in this example, both didn't get. That was my mistake in the beginning of the entry. I entered with 1 and I didn't have a stop. However, let's just say that happened in real time. I'm still up right here. I can say, well, you know what? I'm going to close my whole position. There's a close button right there, and we are out of the position, right? And then how do we proceed? Well, you need to wait again now and wait for confirmation on when that line turns blue. So in this case, you're waiting and waiting and waiting. So you basically keep waiting, right? And in this example, you see it here, right? Your entry right now would be here. You have, this is the confirmation. This is your entry, right? Your stop goes below here, right? You see in this example, you got this nice candle up. And this in this example, right? So here we had this move. We had this, we had a pullback, then we had a harder pullback. Now we're continuing. Sometimes, right, you're going to enter. You'll get a, here you got a little doji, a flat candle, and then boom, you got an engulfing, right? So at that point, you're thinking, well, let me see what happens next. Continues. So in this example, right, just to show, you're aiming ultimately for this high. So if you're going up to the upside, right, and the same goes for here. So there is a trend that occurs here, and you can see it over time. So if I go back here and I mark, this high, let's just say, you could take the wick high, you could take the body high. See how when this flip occurred, right? So right here, this color changed, right? We like to say flip. The color flips from red to blue, right? So here you had an entry. Your stop is below here, and you are targeting, right? You're targeting a high right here, right? Which you do get to, and when you get to that, you see there's a rejection. It's not always perfect. The market's not perfect all the time. Now we then continue, right? Now you're paying attention to this high technically, right? And ultimately you want to reach this one, right? In this case here, we're going down, right? We reached this wick right here, and then ultimately we possibly might continue. But what I wanted to show is also in this example, right? And I'm doing this for length of time. I want to cover also some other trades that didn't work here. But when this entry came up, your stop was below, right? And now you go boom, 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 and right there you're out, right? Could have there been a bigger high? Yeah, probably. We can look back here. There was another one. And this is the things that you got to practice over time. All right, we ultimately hit that high. You see how this flip eventually, so it hit that first target that I was looking for, that wick high. And if you decided to hold for any reason, this comes into strategy, risk management, sizing and positioning. We'll, again, covered in other videos. You can always take advantage of that by positioning yourself with, let's say, 2 contracts, right? Letting one go at the high. These are different strategies, but you get the idea of how it works. Yeah, you get the idea of how it works. You hit the highs, right? And then when you're going down, you're looking for lows. Now, you do have, and again, we cover this in risk management, you do have situations like this, right? Where here you had a confirmation, right? And then all of a sudden you engulf over, right? Or this candle, if you're not familiar with engulfing candles, this was a candle to the downside, right? And then here the body closes previous. So you want to manage your risk, right? And say, well, now we're approaching. So this is where it's important to watch a video on sizing, right? Because there's certain sizing we've tested over and over again. This all depends also on your account size, where even if you do hit your full stop, right, you will still be able to make a decent recovery even if you had a loss. There's another rule as well that, try not to cover too much in this video, but so let's say you were here, you were short in this situation, right? You had an entry right here and your stop loss was here. Well, as soon as price comes back above, you do nothing. But as soon as this line now does change, right, it flips to this blue color, right? What you need to do, right, there's a little REV here on NinjaTrader. You basically hit reverse position if you're comfortable with the size you're using, or you can always hit close, right? And then instead of sell, right, so here, when this turned red, right, you hit sell, correct? Now, when this came back here, the line turned blue, and this candle closes and confirms. Over here, you're looking to buy now. So now this has changed, right? So technically in this, you didn't hit your full stop because the line did turn blue here, right? And now you're looking to take that buy signal, right? So you'd hit buy market, or again, if you already had one down, right, one contract in, let's say you were going down, right, and price all of a sudden does this, and then here that line turns blue, you have two options. You can hit that reverse button, or you can hit close and then hit buy, right? So this is a quick video on how to use it, right? Actually, we're 16 minutes in. It's not that quick, but it's a video on how to use the indicator in NinjaTrader. If you have any questions, please let us know. Enjoy.